Tip number 12, think beyond VLANs. So Mark, VLANs as a means of separating AV system-related traffic from other critical traffic on a customer's network, it's a pretty common strategy for integrators and consultants, but can you talk about how that's only part of the solution and part of the conversation that they should be having with IT directors?
Yeah, I think that this, we talk about VLANs, and we understand that that's best practice for segregating the traffic. You establish a common subnet that's unique to AV services. But the challenge happens when there has to be communication outside that VLAN, like to databases, authentication services, Outlook Exchange, and that sort of thing. So VLANs and access control lists, or ACLs, are good for access and for segregating traffic. But when the network traffic sits on the network, the bandwidth and performance contributes to the total aggregate of the network. You can't go at faster speeds and take up more bandwidth simply because you've established a VLAN. So you have to look at when there are certain scenarios where very high performance is required. For example, I was taking this linear editing where you have very large files, where you're trying to separate them and put them, edit files and then store them and retrieve them. And that's not going to work simply by using the VLANs. You need to look at possibly subsetting the network. I've had a lot of good luck with establishing a firewalled off network where I can stick a lot of the services that have local dependency. IP switches don't have to talk to anything else but other IP devices. So they don't have to be anywhere else. The problem with the firewall scenarios is the cost, but there are ways to be able to push the traffic around the network that actually can virtually appear as if it's behind that firewall. And that allows you to have sub-components or sub-little stations of very intense network services that are very high bandwidth locally, but then the conversations between that, outside of that device to another area, can transport over the network. So I think we need to look at that understanding. I guess the point here is that people throw down VLANs thinking that's the answer to the question, but I think it goes back to the workflow. Who needs access and from where?